Mina sat on the edge of her small bed, holding her phone close to her ear. On the other side, her cousin Sana sounded weak and restless. "Please, Mina, you have to help me today," Sana said in a tired voice. "I've caught a bad fever. I can't even stand properly. But the wedding is very important. They already booked me months ago. I've prepared everything, the booth is set, the camera is ready. You just need to go and handle it." Mina frowned. "But Sana, you know I'm not a photographer like you. I've only helped you sometimes with editing. What if I make a mistake? What if they find out I don't know what I'm doing?" Sana gave a small cough before answering, "You won't make a mistake. You've seen me work so many times. You know how to hold the camera, how to click. It's not about perfection, it's about being present. If I don't show up, the family will be angry. Please, Mina, just this once." Mina's heart softened. She could never say no to Sana, who had always treated her like a sister. Sana was passionate about photography and had worked hard to build her name. Missing this wedding could affect her reputation. "All right," Mina finally whispered. "I'll go. But only for today. You owe me a big favor later." Sana let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you. Just dress neatly, carry my bag, and be polite. Nobody will notice. And remember, don't panic. Just smile and click." After ending the call, Mina quickly got ready. She wore a soft peach-colored dress that matched her calm nature. She tied her long dark hair into a neat bun, added light earrings, and looked at herself in the mirror. She didn't look like a professional photographer, but at least she looked presentable. With Sana's black camera bag over her shoulder, she stepped out of the house, her heart beating fast. The wedding was being held in one of the grand halls of the city. As Mina entered, her eyes widened. Glittering lights hung from the ceiling, fresh flowers decorated every corner, and music filled the air. The hall was alive with laughter, chatter, and the fragrance of roses. She had attended weddings before, but being responsible for something here made her feel different. She quietly found her way to the photography booth, which Sana had arranged beautifully. The camera stood on its tripod, surrounded by decorative lights and a backdrop of pastel flowers. Mina placed the bag down, checked the camera settings Sana had prepared earlier, and whispered to herself, "Just press the button, just smile, and it will be fine." As guests began to arrive for photos, Mina tried to hide her nervousness. A group of children ran in first, giggling and making faces. She raised the camera and clicked. The flash went off, and the children laughed even louder. That wasn't so bad, she thought, feeling a small wave of relief. Soon, families started coming one after another. Mina adjusted the camera, asked them to smile, and captured their moments. She was careful, polite, and gentle, though inside she worried if she was doing enough. Nobody seemed to notice her hesitation, they were too busy enjoying the evening. But still, she wished time would pass quickly so she could return home without being caught. Just then, something shifted in the air. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a man entering the hall with a little girl. He wasn't like the other guests who laughed loudly or chatted in groups. He walked quietly, with steady steps, holding the hand of the child beside him. The man was tall, dressed in a simple yet elegant dark suit. His presence carried a calm authority, but his eyes softened whenever he looked at the girl. The child, wearing a pink frock with a matching ribbon in her hair, clung to his hand happily. Mina didn't know why, but her eyes stayed on them longer than usual. Something about the way he gently bent down to listen to the girl, the way he smiled only for her, touched her heart. She quickly looked away, reminding herself that she was here for a job, nothing else. The girl tugged at the man's sleeve and pointed towards the booth. "Baba, can we take a picture?" she asked in her sweet little voice. The man nodded, and together they walked straight toward Meena. Her hands tightened around the camera as she forced a smile. She wasn't ready for this, especially not for someone who carried such a strong presence. "Excuse me," the man said politely, his voice deep but warm. Meena looked up, and for the first time, their eyes met. Hers were wide with nervousness, his were calm yet curious. For a moment, the crowd around them seemed to disappear. She quickly blinked and bent down toward the girl. "Would you like a picture with your father?" Meena asked softly. The little girl nodded eagerly, and Meena guided them to stand under the decorated backdrop. She raised the camera, her hands steady despite the racing of her heart. Through the lens, she saw a father holding his daughter's hand, both smiling. It was a simple picture, yet it carried a warmth that touched her deeply. As she clicked, she felt something unusual. This wasn't just another photo. It was the beginning of something she didn't yet understand. Meena lowered the camera, her lips curving into a small smile. "Perfect," she whispered. But she had no idea how much this one encounter was about to change her life. The flash of the camera faded, but the image stayed in Meena's heart. She quickly lowered the camera and smiled at the little girl. "You look very pretty," Meena said warmly. The girl giggled, hiding behind her father's arm for a moment before peeking out again. "Thank you," she whispered. Meena's eyes softened. Children always made her feel at ease, even when she was nervous about adults around her. She turned to the father, who stood calmly, his tall frame straight, his eyes watching her quietly. "Would you like another one?" Meena asked politely, trying to keep her tone professional, even though she wasn't one. The man gave a small nod. "If it's not too much trouble." Meena quickly adjusted the camera again. This time, the father bent down slightly and placed his arm gently around his daughter's shoulder. The little girl leaned against him, smiling with pure happiness. Meena clicked, capturing a moment that looked so natural it almost felt painted by life itself. When she lowered the camera again, she caught the man's eyes. There was something steady in his gaze, something that made her feel as if he was quietly observing her, not just the work she was doing. She quickly looked down, pretending to check the photo on the screen. "It's a good picture," she said softly, handing a small smile toward the girl. The girl clapped her hands. "Baba, can we keep her? She takes nice pictures." The man gave a small laugh, low and warm. It was the first time Meena had heard his voice in such a way, and for a second, she forgot where she was. "I think she belongs to this booth, Ayla," he said, calling his daughter by name. Ayla pouted playfully. "But I like her." Meena bent down to Ayla's level. "You're very sweet. Maybe one day, I'll take more pictures for you." The girl's face lit up, and for a brief moment, Meena forgot all her nervousness. It was just her, the little girl, and the feeling of simple happiness in a busy wedding hall. But then, reality returned. She was pretending to be Sana. She wasn't supposed to get involved. She quickly straightened up, adjusting the camera's strap on her shoulder, as if to remind herself of the task at hand. The man looked at her again. His expression wasn't overly warm, but it wasn't cold either. It was steady, thoughtful. "You're very good with children," he said simply. Mina blinked, surprised at his words. "Oh, thank you," she murmured, unsure what else to say. She wanted to explain that she wasn't really a professional photographer, that she was only helping Sana. But she stopped herself. The less she spoke, the easier it would be to remain unnoticed. The man gave a small nod and gently guided his daughter away, leaving Mina with an odd mix of relief and disappointment. She didn't know why she cared, but his presence had left a small mark on her evening. As the night went on, more families came to the booth. Mina clicked photos, adjusted poses, and smiled whenever needed. Slowly, her nervousness faded as she became lost in the rhythm of the work. But every now and then, her eyes wandered across the hall, searching without realizing for the tall man and the little girl. And every time she spotted them, she felt a quiet warmth. The girl laughed freely, and the father followed calmly behind, always keeping her close. They weren't like others, loud, distracted, or busy in conversations. They seemed like their own little world, complete yet quietly lonely. Later in the evening, when the music changed and people moved toward the dinner tables, the booth became empty for a while. Mina sat on the small stool, stretching her tired hands. She allowed herself a small breath of relief, thinking maybe her part of the job was almost done. But then, she heard the familiar voice again. "Excuse me." She looked up and almost froze. The same man stood there once more, his daughter beside him, smiling brightly. "Oh, hello," Mina said, quickly standing. Ayla tugged her father's hand. "Baba, one more. Please." The man sighed lightly but gave in. "All right, one more." Mina laughed gently, raising the camera again. This time, Ayla insisted on standing alone first. She posed with her hands on her hips, making a funny face. Mina clicked, and both she and the father chuckled at the sight. Then, the girl ran back and hugged her father's leg. "Together," she declared. So Mina clicked again, capturing the way the little girl clung to him with so much trust, and the way his eyes softened whenever he looked at her. When it was done, Ayla ran to see the preview on the camera. "I love it," she said cheerfully. Mina smiled, but when she looked up, the father's eyes were already on her. It wasn't just a passing glance this time. His gaze lingered, curious, almost searching. Mina felt her breath catch, and she quickly busied herself with adjusting the strap of the camera. "Thank you," the man said quietly. She gave a small nod. "It's no trouble." They walked away once more, but the moment stayed behind. Mina found herself staring at the empty space they had left, her heart strangely unsettled. For the first time that evening, she wasn't worried about being discovered as an imposter. She was worried about why a stranger's presence had begun to matter to her. And somewhere in the crowd, the man Armin wondered why the simple photographer behind the booth had caught his attention in a way no one had in years. The wedding hall was alive with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Guests moved between tables and the dance floor, their colorful clothes glowing under the lights. Mina, however, stayed near the booth, her camera in hand, trying to blend into the background. She had done well so far. Families came, posed, smiled, and left with cheerful words. Each picture gave Mina a little more confidence. She thought to herself, maybe I can survive this night without anyone realizing Sana isn't here. But every now and then, her eyes searched the crowd. She didn't mean to, yet they always looked for one figure, the tall man with his little daughter. It wasn't long before she saw them again. Ayla was holding a small balloon, jumping happily, while her father followed behind at his calm pace. She was full of energy, pulling him toward the booth once again. "Baba, please, just one more picture," Ayla pleaded, her eyes bright. Her father gave a small sigh, the kind only parents gave when they were defeated by their child's smile. "You've already taken 3, Ayla. But this one will be the best," she insisted, looking at Meena with hopeful eyes. Meena laughed softly. "Of course, we can take one more. Come on." The little girl ran forward, standing proudly in the center. Meena lifted the camera, but then she paused. She knelt down to Ayla's level and adjusted the ribbon in her hair. "Now you look perfect," she said warmly. Ayla giggled, and Meena clicked the photo. The flash captured her joy. The father stood nearby, watching silently. His eyes didn't move from Meena, noticing how easily she connected with his daughter. She wasn't just clicking pictures. She was making Ayla laugh, making her comfortable. That kind of ease was rare. "Would you like to join her?" Meena asked, standing and turning to him. He hesitated, as if he wasn't used to being invited. But Ayla tugged his hand. "Yes, Baba. Please." So he stepped forward, standing beside his daughter. Meena adjusted the frame, capturing the bond between them. The little girl was glowing with happiness, while her father's hand rested protectively on her shoulder. Click. Another memory captured. When she lowered the camera, Meena smiled at Ayla. "Beautiful. You two make a lovely pair." Ayla beamed, but her father's eyes shifted slightly. His gaze lingered on Meena, thoughtful, almost unreadable. "You're very patient," he said at last. Meena blinked. "I just like children," she answered simply. Something flickered in his eyes, something softer than before. For a moment, Meena wondered what kind of life he lived outside these walls. He carried himself like someone important, yet with his daughter, he was just a father trying to keep her happy. The next guests arrived, and Meena excused herself quickly, focusing back on her work. Still, the moment stayed with her. Hours passed. The ceremony was nearing its end, and Meena was beginning to feel the weight of the evening. Her feet ached, and her shoulders were stiff, but her heart was strangely light. She had survived. As she packed some of the extra equipment into Sana's bag, she felt a small tap on her arm. She turned, startled, to find Ayla smiling up at her. "You're still here?" Ayla said cheerfully. "Yes," Meena replied with a laugh. "I have to finish my work." Ayla held out a small sweet wrapped in shiny paper. "This is for you. Because you made me happy." Meena's heart melted. She bent down, taking the sweet carefully. "Thank you, Ayla. You're very kind." The girl's father approached then, his steps quiet but steady. Meena stood quickly, her hands tightening around the sweet. "She doesn't usually open up to strangers so easily," he said, almost as if thinking aloud. Meena gave a small smile. "Children are honest. They only go where they feel safe." His eyes rested on her, and for a second, neither of them spoke. The noise of the wedding seemed to fade into the background. It was just him, her, and the little girl who stood happily between them. Meena cleared her throat and looked down. She didn't want to draw more attention than necessary. "I'm glad I could help her smile," she said softly. The man gave a small nod. "You did more than that." Before she could ask what he meant, he gently guided his daughter away. Meena watched them go, her chest tight with a feeling she couldn't name. When the wedding finally ended, Mina packed up the booth completely. She was exhausted but relieved. Nobody had questioned her, and Sana's reputation was safe. Still, her thoughts kept drifting back to one father and his daughter. Why did their presence affect her so much? Why did his gaze linger in her memory, making her heart restless? She shook her head, telling herself it was just a passing moment. Tomorrow, life would go back to normal. She would return the camera to Sana, help her with editing, and forget about tonight. But deep down, Mina knew some moments couldn't be forgotten so easily. And somewhere outside, as he buckled his daughter into the car seat, the man named Armin was thinking the same thing. When the last guests left the wedding hall, the noise slowly faded. The music stopped, the lights dimmed, and the workers began clearing the tables. For Mina, it was finally time to breathe. She rubbed her tired hands and carefully packed the camera into Sana's bag. Her heart was calmer now. She had done it. The evening was over without any mistake, and Sana's work had been protected. Nobody had questioned her, nobody had guessed that she was only pretending. Still, her mind was not free. A pair of eyes and a child's laughter kept replaying inside her. She told herself firmly, it was just a job. Tomorrow, I won't even remember them. But destiny had one last thing planned for that night. Mina was bending down to zip the bag when she heard small footsteps. She looked up to see Ayla running toward her, her little pink frock swaying as she hurried across the empty hall. In her tiny hand, she carried a white flower that had fallen from the stage decoration. "This is for you," Ayla said breathlessly, holding it out with both hands. "Because you took my pictures and made me happy." Mina's eyes softened instantly. She bent down and accepted the flower carefully, as if it were the most precious gift in the world. "Thank you, Ayla. I'll keep it safe." The girl smiled proudly, then quickly turned back, calling, "Baba." Her father Armin appeared a moment later, walking toward them with his usual calm steps. His eyes landed on Mina, and for a second, something unreadable passed across his face. He looked tired, but also thoughtful, as though the day had left him with more than just memories. "Ayla," he said gently, "it's time to go." The little girl nodded but looked once more at Mina. "Bye. Don't forget my flower." Mina laughed softly, waving. "I won't. Goodbye, Ayla." Armin's gaze stayed on her a moment longer. His voice was low, almost formal, but there was a weight behind it. "You made this evening easier for my daughter, and for me. I appreciate it." Mina didn't know how to respond. Nobody had ever said such words to her with that kind of quiet sincerity. She gave a small smile, clutching the flower in her hand. "I'm glad I could help." He gave a short nod, then turned to guide his daughter out of the hall. The sight of his tall figure and the small child's hand wrapped securely in his stayed in her eyes until they disappeared into the night. By the time Mina reached home, it was past midnight. The city lights glittered outside her window as she set the flower gently inside a glass of water on her desk. She sat on her bed, thinking of everything that had happened. Her cousin Sana would ask about the wedding in the morning, and Mina would have to explain how she managed. She would say it was fine, that nobody noticed. But she would never mention the man and the little girl. That was a memory she wanted to keep only in her heart. Lying down, she told herself again, it was just one night. They're gone. You'll never see them again. Yet sleep came slowly, because her mind kept replaying the way Armin's deep voice had sounded when he thanked her. Meanwhile, Armin drove home quietly, his daughter fast asleep in the back seat. The city roads were nearly empty, the silence giving him space to think. It had been a long time since anyone had made his daughter so comfortable. Since his wife's passing, Ayla often kept to herself, shy with strangers. Yet tonight, she had laughed freely, running toward the young woman without hesitation. Armin's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. Who was she really? She didn't act like most photographers he had seen. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, she wasn't even fully confident with the camera. But there was something natural about her, something genuine. When they reached home, Armin carried Ayla gently to her bed. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and stood watching her for a long time. She clutched her toy rabbit close, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. Armin whispered to himself, "You smiled a lot today." His voice was almost a question, though Ayla was already asleep. He left the room and walked to his study. The night outside was quiet, but inside his chest, something unsettled. He told himself it was just a passing encounter. Still, the image of the young woman's kind smile refused to leave his thoughts. Back in her small room, Mina finally drifted to sleep. The flower rested beside her bed, its white petals glowing faintly in the dim light. She didn't know that in another part of the city, a man was also awake, thinking of the same few moments she could not forget. It had only been a wedding. A single evening, a single meeting. Yet somehow, both of their lives had already begun to shift. And destiny, though still silent, had already written the next page of their story. The morning after the wedding, Mina handed Sana's camera back to her cousin. Sana looked pale but was already feeling better. She sat at the small table, sipping tea while checking through the memory card. "You did well, Mina," Sana said with relief. "The pictures are clear, and everyone looks happy. I don't know what I would have done without you." Mina smiled faintly. "I was nervous the whole time. But I think nobody noticed." Sana laughed softly. "See? You can do it. You have an eye for details. Maybe you should think about photography more seriously." Mina shook her head quickly. "No, Sana. That was just once. I don't belong in that world of lights and crowds. I'll stick to helping you edit quietly." She didn't say what was truly in her heart, that she couldn't stop thinking about a certain father and daughter. That memory felt too personal to share. A week passed. Life returned to its usual rhythm. Mina spent her days helping Sana edit photos at a small cafe near their home. It was a quiet place with wooden tables, warm lights, and the smell of coffee always in the air. She liked working there because it gave her peace. One afternoon, Mina sat at her laptop, adjusting colors on the wedding pictures. She zoomed in to check the details of a smiling child, then moved to a family group photo. Her eyes froze for a second when she accidentally opened the picture of Armin and Ayla. Her fingers hesitated on the keyboard. Their smiles looked so natural, so pure. Without realizing, she found herself staring too long. She quickly shook her head and closed the photo. "Stop thinking about them, Mina. They're gone. That evening is over." But destiny had other plans. The bell above the cafe door rang as someone entered. Mina didn't look up at first, focused on her work. But then she heard a small, excited voice. "It's you." Mina's head snapped up, her eyes widening. There stood Ayla, her little pink frock replaced with a simple blue dress, her hair tied with the same ribbon. The child was pointing directly at her, smiling brightly. Ayla, Mina whispered without thinking. Behind her, Armin walked in, dressed in a crisp shirt, carrying his usual calm presence. His eyes landed on Mina instantly, as though he had already expected to see her. Mina's cheeks warmed. She stood quickly, fumbling with her words. Hello, this is a surprise. Armin raised an eyebrow, his tone calm but curious. So it wasn't just chance that you disappeared after the wedding. Mina looked down, embarrassed. I was only helping my cousin. She is the real photographer. That evening, she was unwell. Instead of being upset, Armin looked almost amused. A faint smile touched his lips. You pretended to be a photographer and still managed to make my daughter smile. That says something. Ayla tugged Mina's hand happily. I told Baba we should find you again. And we did. Mina's heart softened. She bent down to the little girl, her voice gentle. I'm glad you remember me. I never forget friends, Ayla replied proudly. Armin watched the exchange in silence. He was a man who usually kept people at a distance, yet this young woman had slipped past his walls with ease, without even trying. They ordered coffee, and though Mina hesitated, they ended up sitting at the same table. Ayla chatted cheerfully, telling Mina about her school and her favorite cartoons. Mina listened with patience, laughing softly at the girl's little stories. Armin mostly listened, his eyes occasionally meeting Mina's. Every time their gazes connected, something unspoken passed between them, a quiet recognition neither could deny. Finally, Armin spoke. You seem comfortable with children. Mina smiled faintly. I grew up in a big family. Younger cousins were always around me. I guess I learned patience that way. Ayla leaned closer to Mina. You should come to my school someday. We have a small event next week. Will you come? Mina hesitated, looking at Armin. His expression was unreadable, but he didn't stop his daughter. Instead, he said quietly, she doesn't invite strangers so easily. Mina's chest tightened at his words. She looked at Ayla's hopeful eyes and nodded gently. If your father agrees, I will come. The girl clapped her hands in excitement. Promise. Promise, Mina said softly. When they finally left, Mina sat back at her table, her heart racing. She had promised to meet them again. She had stepped into their world once more. As for Armin, driving home, he glanced at his daughter in the back seat. She was humming happily, clutching her toy rabbit. You like her a lot, don't you? He asked. Yes, Baba. She's nice. She makes me feel happy. Armin stayed silent for a while, then murmured to himself, she makes things feel lighter. He didn't realize he was smiling faintly as the car moved through the evening streets. Neither of them knew it yet, but what began as a chance meeting at a wedding booth was slowly turning into something deeper, something that would test their hearts in ways they never expected. The week passed quickly, and for Mina, each day carried a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. She tried to focus on her routine, helping Sana with editing, running errands, and reading in her spare time, but her thoughts often drifted to the small cafe meeting. Ayla's innocent invitation replayed in her heart. Come to my school event. It was just a child's request, yet it felt like something bigger. For some reason, Mina couldn't say no. The day of the event arrived. Mina stood at the school gate, holding a small bouquet of fresh flowers she had bought on her way. She felt out of place among the parents rushing in, but when she saw Ayla waving from across the courtyard, her worries melted. "You came!" Ayla shouted happily, running to hug her. Mina bent down, hugging her back. "Of course. I promised, didn't I?" Armin was standing nearby, watching silently. He gave a small nod, his usual calm expression hiding the fact that he was relieved. He hadn't been sure if she would really come, but she did. The school event was simple but full of joy. Children performed dances, sang songs, and recited poems. Mina sat beside Armin in the audience, clapping for each performance. Ayla appeared on stage wearing a costume with wings, part of a group dance. She looked a little nervous at first, but when she spotted Mina in the crowd waving at her, her smile returned, and she performed with confidence. Armin noticed it too. His gaze shifted to Mina. "She smiled because of you," he said quietly. Mina shook her head. "She smiled because she is brave." But inside, her heart swelled with warmth. When the performance ended, Ayla ran to them, hugging both of them together. "Did you see me? Did you like it?" "You were wonderful," Mina said sincerely. "The best," Armin added softly. Ayla laughed happily, standing between them, holding both their hands as if it was the most natural thing in the world. After the event, they all went to a small ice cream shop nearby. Ayla chatted endlessly, telling stories about her teachers and classmates. Mina listened with patience, asking small questions that kept the little girl talking. Armin mostly stayed quiet, but he observed closely. It had been a long time since he had seen his daughter this lively outside their home. It was as if Mina had filled a missing space without even trying. "You're very good with her," Armin said finally, when Ayla went to choose another topping. Mina smiled faintly. "She makes it easy. She's full of love." Armin leaned back slightly, his eyes still on her. "It's not just that. Not everyone understands her so quickly." "You do." Mina lowered her gaze, unsure how to answer. She wasn't used to being noticed like this. Her life had always been simple, almost invisible. Yet here was a man who spoke as if she mattered. Days turned into weeks, and their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes Armin would stop by the cafe where Mina worked with Sana, bringing Ayla along. Sometimes Mina would join them at the park on weekends. The bond grew naturally, without effort. Ayla adored Mina, clinging to her hand, asking for stories, showing her drawings. And every time Armin watched them together, something inside him softened. One evening, as the three of them walked through the park, Ayla ran ahead to play on the swings, leaving Mina and Armin standing quietly under a tree. "She trusts you," Armin said, his voice thoughtful. Mina glanced at him. "Children are trusting by nature." "Not always," Armin replied, his tone low. After her mother passed, Ayla became very quiet. She didn't talk much, didn't smile often. "But with you," he paused, as though the words were difficult. "With you, she's different. Happier." Mina's heart ached at his confession. She hadn't known about his wife. She wanted to say something comforting, but words felt too small. Instead, she said softly, "Sometimes, all children need is someone to listen." Their eyes met, and for a moment, silence said what words could not. Later that night, when Mina returned home, she sat by her window, thinking about everything. She reminded herself that she shouldn't get too close. Armin was a man from a different world, wealthy, respected, and carrying responsibilities she couldn't imagine. She was just an ordinary girl who had stepped into his life by accident. Yet no matter how much she tried to draw a line, her heart refused to listen. Each memory with Ayla and Armin had already become too precious. At the same time, Armin sat in his study, staring at a picture of his late wife on the desk. For years, he had locked his emotions away, focusing only on raising his daughter and running his business. But now, a gentle voice, a kind smile, and a woman who had entered his life by chance were shaking those walls. He whispered to himself, "Why does it feel so easy with her?" He didn't have the answer. But both of them knew, even without saying it aloud, that something between them was changing. Something that neither had planned, yet both could feel growing stronger with every passing day. It was a bright Saturday morning when Mina stood outside Ayla's school, clutching a small bouquet of fresh flowers. She had promised to attend the school event weeks ago, and today was the day. Her heart beat faster than usual. She looked at the crowd of parents and children streaming into the school hall. She felt nervous, yet excited. Ayla's tiny hand tugged hers from across the courtyard. "You came," she shouted joyfully, running toward her. Mina bent down and hugged her tightly. "Of course, I promised," she whispered. Armin followed quietly behind, his calm presence steadying her nervousness. He nodded at Mina, a small, approving smile on his face. Ayla took her father's hand and led them both into the hall, chatting non-stop about her excitement. The event had started. Children performed songs, dances, and recited poems. Mina and Armin sat together in the audience, clapping for each performance. Every time Ayla appeared on stage, she smiled toward Mina, who waved back. It was a simple act, but it made the little girl shine brighter than anyone else. Armin's eyes shifted to Mina frequently. Each smile, each laugh, each gentle nod from her seemed to reach him more deeply than he expected. He realized that she had become part of their lives, more than he had anticipated. When the performances ended, Ayla ran to them, holding both their hands. "Did you see me? Did you like it?" she asked eagerly. "You were amazing," Mina said sincerely. "The best," Armin added, his voice soft but full of warmth. Ayla hugged them both, giggling. "You both are my favorite people." Mina felt her chest tighten. She had never imagined that a simple act of helping her cousin at a wedding would lead her here, sharing such a special moment with a father and his daughter. Armin, too, felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He looked at Mina, noticing the gentle warmth in her eyes, the kindness in her smile, and the way she seemed to belong effortlessly in their little world. After the event, they walked together toward the nearby park. Ayla ran ahead to play, leaving Mina and Armin behind. The quiet between them was comfortable, yet filled with unspoken words. "I never thought, meeting you that night at the wedding would lead to this," Armin said finally, his voice low but steady. Mina looked at him, her heart racing. "I didn't expect it either," she replied softly. He paused, glancing at her. "You've brought so much joy to Ayla's life, and mine too." Mina's eyes softened. "I just like spending time with her. And with you. You're kind, even if you don't always show it." Armin smiled faintly, almost shyly. "I don't often let people in. But you. I feel like I can." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Mina's hands clenched slightly around her bouquet. She wanted to say more, but words felt inadequate. That evening, after walking Ayla home and tucking her into bed, Armin and Mina sat together in the living room. The quiet hum of the city outside was the only sound. Armin turned to her. I know it's sudden. And I don't want to rush anything. But I can't ignore how I feel anymore. You've become part of our lives, Mina. I want you to stay. Mina felt tears prick her eyes. She had imagined this moment many times, yet reality was even more beautiful. She thought of the wedding hall, the laughter, the little hands that had reached for her, and she whispered, I want to stay too, if you and Ayla want me to. Armin reached out and took her hand gently. I do. More than you can imagine. The simple touch spoke volumes. After years of silence and solitude, his heart had opened again. For the first time in a long time, he felt hope, warmth, and the possibility of a future filled with love. The days that followed were full of small joys. They spent time together, laughing, sharing stories, and enjoying the little moments. Mina taught Ayla how to draw flowers and animals, while Armin watched quietly, content. Sometimes, the three of them would sit on the balcony, watching the sunset, feeling peaceful and happy. It wasn't just about the big gestures. It was about being there for each other, about shared smiles, laughter, and comfort. Armin realized that life had given him a second chance at love, not just for himself, but for his daughter. And Mina understood that sometimes, unexpected events could bring the greatest happiness. One evening, as they walked home from the park, Ayla ran ahead and shouted, Baba, Mina. Look at the stars. Mina smiled, looking up at the sky filled with tiny twinkling lights. Armin took a deep breath, holding her hand firmly. Maybe this is how life is supposed to be, he said quietly. Full of little surprises, and people who become your family unexpectedly. Mina squeezed his hand, feeling the same certainty in her heart. Yes, she whispered. And I'm not letting go. Under the quiet sky, father, daughter, and Mina walked together, their hearts intertwined. It had started as a simple favor at a wedding booth, but it had grown into something deeper: love, trust, and the promise of a future together. And in that moment, they all knew, without a doubt, that they had found what they were looking for, each other.